The microphones are on. Okay. I'd like to welcome everybody to this special meeting of the Board of Supervisors on this April 8, 2014. If you all stand, and Supervisor Dela Cruz will lead us in the pledge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ready to...
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion to acknowledge certificate of posting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. We will now return to the public hearing for the Health and Human Services. Mr. Espinoza?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was a continuance item from our last regular agenda, from our April 1st agenda. And today we're going to have for you Jim Riding-Sword along with Enrique here to discuss this item with you further and request your board to adopt the recommended grant, CDBG grant associated with this. So we have Jim here to discuss this further. Jim?
Good morning. So you have attached the complete application that we are asking for your approval to submit to the state. This application is due by Friday, the 11th. We will probably drive it up on Thursday to be sure that it's there. And so today we're asking you to receive the report, close the public hearing that was continued from April the 1st, authorize and approve the submission of the 2014 CDBG grant application, authorize the HSA director or deputy director to accept the grant if awarded, enter into and execute the grant agreement, and use subsequent amendments with the State of California, and execute fund request and others required reporting forms for purposes of administering the grant, and finally authorize the chair to sign the resolution. And then authorize the county administrator to execute the assurances pertaining to the grant. So I think we had quite a bit of discussion last week. If there are any questions or comments that any of the board has, we'll be happy to address those this morning.
Are there any additional questions of the board?
No.
Okay. Then I will allow the public to comment in the public hearing part of this session.
Okay. Just
Yes,
one.
I do have one speaker.
Okay.
Sarah Herbert.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Herbert. I have two questions about this. The first is, do you know what percent of our homeless population use the shelter each night? And the second question is do you have any idea whether the use of the day shelter will be any different than the night one?
Yes, if I may.
Yes, Jim.
The last I heard, we have about 20 people per night in the winter shelter. And the last I read, there are about 185 what are considered chronically homeless people on the streets of San Benito County. The daycare center, or the day center, we hope that the accessibility to a well-organized day center and, in fact, approximate location closer to the community food bank will increase usage We also are planning to work through this grant with the homeless on the streets to kind of help them come forward and get these services. And then if I may, there are copies of this grant in the back for the public, and also sign-in sheets in case anybody wishes to sign in, so that we know that we have a record of that for the state.
Next speaker is Marty Richmond.
Marty Richmond from Hollister, thank you for the time, and I owe a card because I failed to fill one out, I'm sorry. I'm supportive of this proposal. I think it's a realistic proposal. There is no perfect solution to the problem. If there was, we would have implemented it long ago. I think people who, well, let's put it this way. I have selfish reasons, like many other people. We're all human. We all have selfish reasons. I think people who believe that if you don't have a homeless shelter, you won't have any homeless have been proven wrong. That's all. I hope some of you have read the terrible article in the Mercury News last week about what happened in Santa Clara County, where essentially the homeless have taken over one of the creeks areas there and turned it into someplace you don't want to be. And the reason is that humans have a will to survive. If they have nowhere else to go, they will go somewhere. This will not solve the homeless problem, either in this county or in California, but it will help the community. It will be a place to go. Just saying you have to move out of here doesn't matter, because when the homeless move out of here, they move across the street to there, wherever there is. Saying, so I've heard the story, just put them on a bus. Well, as the bus pulls out the front of San Benito County, a bus will pull in the back of San Benito County with the homeless from the guys down the street who will just send their homeless here. This will not solve the problem. It will not probably reduce the number of homeless, but it will help the community and help them somewhat. I think it's a practical solution. The fact that we might be able to get the funding from the big sky country where the money is would help us. Thank you for your time.
I don't have a card.
If you want to come forward.
I think we need to take the microphone to him.
Would you take the mic there, Mr. Chair?
Okay, it's coming.
See if you can do this.
My name is Keith.
Speak right into here.
All right, my name is Keith, and there is a solution. It's called budget, and you guys are doing the Hollister doing a grant for $1.2 million for honest people, but the solution is they want to do tents, like Santa Cruz, right? But a lot of people in the city here in Second County is homeless. What we need to do, if you look at my website, I did it 4.5 hours. It's trailers, double-wide trailers, triple-wide trailers, and do it like that. And I think, now I camp for a tent. And then you have, they work together as a team, all the homeless people. You have this called interaction, communication. See, a lot of people here in the city kind of knows who's homeless, who not homeless. And then a lot of homeless do drugs, alcohol. And we need, when you work with them, have them go to work, have to be independent. It's called self-education, to educate yourself. It's like our kids every day. We need, they need love. They need respect. They need a solution. Between you guys there, board, city council, and city hall, you guys are smart. You're intelligent. Big guys need your head. But one thing is like human services, all that, you know, and a lot of wasteful spending. But points, right, if you look at my website, all down to homes, to everything, it takes time to do it. But if you use your head, you can do it. If you set your mind to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Snow. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board at this time? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing portion of this. Jim, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
If we're successful in getting the 1.5 million grant for the homeless shelter, is this going to be a single for singles, or is it going to take care of our family issues also?
The shelter has accommodations for families.
So it will be able to take care of both
Yes.
in totality?
Totality is a big word.
Well, I mean, as many homeless families as we have now, we're going to be able to put them into this.
Well, I think that,
As many homeless families that we're sheltering for the winter up at the
Yes.
family migrant camp, we
Yes.
have room for them in the.
Yes.
Oh, very good.
and I think that the long-term strategy, and we've been talking about this in the Homeless Planning Committee, is a strategy of moving people into permanent housing. And that's the next step that the Homeless Planning Committee is going to start to work on, and we're expanding the group to bring in as many community people as we can.
Very good. Okay, are there any, Supervisor De La Cruz?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Jim, I'm looking at the target ID makeup of the application, and it's on page 15 of our package. And I see the primary numbers, the one, physically disabled persons with AIDS, youth, 4 single adults, single men, single woman, and then on number 7 is families. Is that the structure where the majority of the money will be going, is the way according to this line?
Did you say page 50?
Well, page 15 on our board package. Oh, it is page 15 in yours too.
Do you know where that is?
We have different page numbers.
It's the application summary.
Okay. What's the header?
All it says is 2014 CDBG application summary. And county.
I believe it's page 4 in the application.
Page
Jim.
Page 4?
Yeah.
One.
2, 3, 4.
Okay, what's your question again?
My question, because our chairman said that what order will families be helped? And by looking at this target ID, it seems like our number one will be the disabled individuals, and then persons with AIDS, and then youth, single adult, single man, single woman, and then family. That's not the. If a funds become available, it's not going to be targeted towards this list.
I think the list, we need to look at the list as an all-inclusive list, and what we need to do in an effective program is look at the needs of the individual and the family as we go forward.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you.
Are there any other questions of the board? And what is the wishes of the board?
I will make a motion, Mr. Chair, that we adopt the per staff recommendation, resolution number 2014-29.
I'll second that motion.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everybody that's worked on this. We will move to our regular agenda. Mr. Espinoza?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to first thank the board as well as staff for making themselves available today to review with you our fiscal year 14-15 budget and what our plans are out of administration and within the county. What we've done is put together about 5 items today to discuss with you the fiscal 14-15 budget process, looking at critiquing last year's budget with the agenda that we have this year as item number 3. We're adding another item this year to our budget, and it's going to be basically a 3 to 5 year plan. So how we're going to integrate that from our narratives into the plan. So we're going to highlight that a little bit as well today. Review with you a fiscal report, 3rd quarter of this last year, 13-14, and discuss a few other miscellaneous items. As a highlight, we'll for the following meeting we're going to have in May the 27th on a Tuesday. We'll be discussing with you different funds. We'll review budget policies and a few other things as well, some carryover items from this meeting. So we just wanted to kind of give a highlight today of what we're doing. I want to thank Melinda as well. She's worked very hard on this. She's actually created a nice packet for you. You have it at your desk. It's a PowerPoint that it's in color, so you can read a little bit clearer. It highlights what was actually published with a few additional items. So the first item with regards to fiscal year 14-15, the budget process, on the first page there, status of budget process and overview. The budget deadline to the department heads was 3/28/14. We received a good amount of them. We're probably in our 90% range right now of receiving almost all of them from the departments. With the narratives, we're requesting again a few different things. One is a 3 to 5 year, kind of looking out a little further from a fiscal point of view, some of their needs, some of their issues that they're confronted with today. Vehicles, infrastructure, some of the switches and other things from a technology point of view. There could be a lot of other things within the departments, roads, so on and so forth, that we've been neglecting to some extent just because of our finances and our budget over the last few years, but looking at what we need to do over the next 3 to 5 years and what we can do to remedy some of these issues. That deadline for the department heads is 4/10/14, so it's this Thursday. They're required to turn in the narratives this week. Meeting with department heads, we've already started that process. Melinda and I spent most of the day yesterday meeting with different departments and reviewing their budgets and looking at some of their requests. So that process will continue on for the most part the remainder of this month, but we have scheduled till April the 21st. And that's what I wanted to kind of highlight for you on this particular page. Melinda, would you like to continue on?
Okay. So I wanted to kind of discuss where we are in putting together this year the fiscal year 14-15 budget. We started with a preliminary budget. We basically took last year's budget and we're putting in things that we know are going to happen even before the departments submit their budgets. I just want to make a quick little note. These little stars are not anything important, overly important, other than they're just bullet points. Somebody asked me a question about that this morning. So basically we looked at revenues, increases, decreases that we know or highly anticipate are going to change. For example, property taxes, we're estimating a 6% increase in assessed value. So we felt pretty comfortable putting in an increase in revenue for property taxes. Expenditures were kind of the same thing. We know that there's going to be some increases and some decreases in various expenditures, such as trial courts are going to cost us a little bit more money this year. However, negotiations shouldn't cost us as much as they did this year. So we made some adjustments in expenditures we were pretty sure about. Negotiations, although there are still pending negotiations with different bargaining groups out there. We know that there are some things that we did this year that will affect where our budget was last year compared to this year, such as some medical insurance caps that were put in and the pickup of some of the PERS costs for the employee share. Then we also knew that there would be step increases. There were most employees would be eligible for a step increase. We know that PERS rates are going to increase about 1.5%. And then we knew there were a couple of targeted departments and positions that we needed to look at this year. And then also we're going to be looking at, we're going to be discussing budget requests with departments. So then we take the budget, so then we take the requests from the budgets, and I just wanted to go through a couple of items that seem to be pretty common in most of the requests that we received so far. We've been, a lot of departments have been requesting an increase in their travel budget. A lot of requests regarding personnel, clerical support, basically the lack of clerical support and how to put that back into their departments. We've had some requests for promotions due to the hiring freeze and the step freezes that we had and the furloughs. The normal process of moving a flexibly staffed position from, say for example, an office assistant 1 that would then, after a year, go to a 2 and then on to a 3. That process is, departments are beginning to want to start that process up again. And then there's been a lot of requests for replacements of lost positions that they lost. Not necessarily new positions, but at least getting back the positions that they've lost over the last couple of years. Then we see a lot of requests for equipment and infrastructure, and specific replacing vehicles that are now over 100,000, have over 100,000 miles on them, and do they just keep putting money into fixing those vehicles, or is there a possibility that they could replace them? And then also items of infrastructure and technology, wanting to replace technology that's now gotten outdated. So unfortunately, we'd like to be able to address all of these issues and find a way to provide funding for all those requests. It doesn't appear that that's going to happen this year. However, we have been looking at some items to address how we can meet those requests. We have the Tyler consultant firm coming in that's going to basically take an overview of various departments in the county as a whole, what we could do a little better. We could work a little more efficiently, a little more productivity. So we're going to be incorporating as much of those findings as we can in this budget. However, that will probably be more within the entire fiscal year next coming up. We have some human resources issues in trying to address some of these requests. We have some policies and procedures that need to be followed, and we have a new type of funding for positions that we want to address, and I was going to have Georgia explain some of those ideas. And then also real quickly, we're going to incorporate a lot of these requests into the 5-year plan. And so Georgia can explain some of these personnel issues.
Good morning, board members. Georgia Cochran, Interim HR Director, what I would like to explain is something your board or this county has not used before, that may be a tool that gives you some additional options when you have stretched dollars and need to hire staff. Currently, we have regular employees who you hire. They are benefited positions, and they serve until someone decides to abolish a vacant position, or the board eliminates a position, at which point an employee is laid off. You also have temporary positions that have the 999-hour limitation or the 960-hour limitation if it's a CalPERS annuitant. At any rate, something that has been used in many jurisdictions for quite some time is referred to as a limited term position. And those positions are benefited positions, so those employees are hired. They have medical leave benefits, CalPERS benefits, all of those things. You treat them as a regular employee, but they are limited term. In that, for example, you have an end date where you know the work is going to end on or about a certain date. They're hired. They know that coming in, so there isn't some surprise layoff at the end. That doesn't mean they couldn't apply for a regular position within the organization if it became vacant. And where those become a real tool for you is where you can't attract talent on a temporary basis, or you need someone 40 hours a week, at which point you'd run out of temporary hours. They're used in grant, a lot of times in grant positions where you have a 3-year grant, and you need to hire someone to oversee that grant or deal with that grant, operate the grant, whatever the case may be. And at that point, that person is hired for the term of that grant. Sometimes if the grant's extended, that position may be extended. It's common for boards to either drop a vacant limited term position at the budget or possibly extend it knowing there's funding, and it gives you that tool. It's also very helpful when there is increase in development activity, because sometimes that's not subject to planning purposes. You might have a lot this year, next year, for the next couple of years, and then things go down again. It's been used with planners, engineers, building inspectors, those kinds of folks. So if the board is interested in that kind of concept, this is what I think some of the requests are coming in for. The departments know they really need a budgeted position. Your board may not feel that there's the revenue to just fund that into perpetuity. Therefore, you might say, over the next couple years through this project or through this grant, we could use a position such as this, and you can put an end date on that position. So that way, when the person's hired, they know it's a 2-year position. So that, if the board is interested, what we would have to pursue is meeting and conferring with our unions to discuss how that would work, and then bring back a change to your current personnel rules to add that definition of an employee into those rules. So that's kind of the explanation there. Is there any questions?
Just a comment, Mr. Chair. We do that already, like you said, with grants, where we have positions, we hire people, and we know, and we, as a board, make it very, very clear that once that grant is spent, that position is gone. So this really would be a position type similar to that, without grant money. So that because there really is no different. When we do hire people under a grant, they are benefits tied to that, right, Georgia?
Correct.
Yeah, so this would be, the only difference is that there would be no dollars that are really attached to that position like a grant.
Well, it may be development agreements or development fees coming in potentially where planning is bringing in some kind of fees, or public works would be bringing in some kind of fee. And the difference also being is that then that position would have status with your new system that's coming in, with the new ERP system. You will, I think for the first time in this county, have a position control system where you can see positions have numbers and you can track, and they have different kinds of things. There are regular positions, there would be limited term positions, there would be temporary positions, so to speak, and you could actually run reports on what's going to expire. You can monitor that. Departments can do that.
That's a
Also,
good
the
point.
CAO's office could do that. So that gives you some structure to that. It also will give you acceptance by the unions that you're using these kinds of positions in various terms, and then there is no issue when the funds run out, the grant ends, and the person is gone.
And I can see that happening in successful project-driven, for instance, if we know that we have a project coming in, we're going to be collecting funds for that project in whatever way, like you said, planning. So I would be supportive of adding, simply because it gives this board more flexibility. You're going about it in the right way by making sure that the unions are involved and that there's that conversation so that there's a buy-in on both ends. So I would support that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, Georgia, first question. Now, when you mean by unions buying into it, it also means items like bumping rights and just an array of other issues that are just red flagging me right now. Is that correct? Will that fit into the matrix?
It could. We haven't started a meet and confer process, and I've seen it done in jurisdictions both ways, where limited term positions do not gain status, they do not gain seniority, they are benefited positions. Other jurisdictions, they gain seniority, and that's dealt with over the course of time. It's much simpler if you can keep them separate. The difference being, if you hire someone for a grant in a limited term position, I'm using grant as the example here, but if you were to hire someone in the position and you say, Mr. De La Cruz, this is a 3-year position, and on June 30th of 2017, your position will end. If you're not gaining seniority, then you may have a real affinity. You're getting some experience from San Benito County, and maybe you want to jump somewhere else because now they have a regular position. If you're gaining seniority, even within the county, so another position comes up with the county, and you want to be a person with seniority. The department needs you to continue with this grant because they hired you, you're involved in it. It would take a lot of time to transition someone else into that. That's a way of keeping you from jumping over here into their other position because you are gaining seniority. I mean, it's not as simple as it sounds,
Right.
but
Listening to Supervisor Barrios and yourself conveyed on the issues, I just kind of put a blank thought out there and started thinking, how would it affect the general fund? It's almost the same concept, really. You take out the grant fund and you put it as a general fund, because earlier you mentioned there's a demand from staff that they like to have some temporary help, depending on the peaks and balances. It's more of a variable labor cost than anything else. We have our fixed labor costs, which is our current employees, and then to meet that demand, we increase that labor cost by adding variable costs. And this to me, looks just like a variable cost.
well, it most certainly is in that case that you describe. So, for example, I'm going to pick on the planning department for a minute. I don't know if Byron's in here, but this has nothing to do with him. But he needs planners, for example. He's got some increased activity, and there is a demand. He's got to have certain duties covered. There's no grant, but he has to get the work done. So somewhere you hire a regular employee, you hire a temporary employee, or you hire a firm. this almost gives you the best of both worlds, because what he could do is hire almost a regular employee. He can attract a planner, because a lot of planners won't come here, for example, for a temporary position, or they will for a couple of months until they, find that first benefited position. Then he can keep those folks here, but you've already set the end date, because this activity is only projected through 18 months.
Is it a
2
higher
years.
burden cost, or is it just like
No.
any other?
It'd be no different than your regular employee. The difference is staff doesn't have to come back during a budget process or a budget cycle and have you then once again go through the process of eliminating a position, because you did that when you created the position. It also doesn't prevent you from extending it. Oh my gosh, 18 months is up, and it looks like we're going to need that person 6 more months. You can extend that, and that's commonly done.
Okay, I guess we could discuss this further. I guess I understand, the academic purpose of it and at a shell level, and then once we get closer to it, we'll talk in more detail.
So the only thing I would say as you move forward and think through this, we do need some lead time to put together the concept and get through the meet and confer process with the union and come back to your board with an amendment to the personnel rules, so that, or an exception to the personnel rules. I haven't quite looked at how we might be able to do that, so that it's in place prior to the departments being ready to hire. If someone were to have a position approved on July 1 and planning to fill that by the end of July or early August, we'd want to be through that process so that the red tape is not what's hanging them up. So that's just something to keep in mind.
I support everything that you've just stated. I think it's a good idea, and get it in our personnel rules, and I think it'll be good for our departments and our employees, as well as opportunity for a temporary person to gain experience. And we got to get the work done, and we have to kind of change how we approach some of these things. So I'm hope that you could get this in place.
We can certainly explore the concept and bring this and move forward with the unions, bring it back to you. This doesn't require that you approve a change to your rules. We could bring back the change and you could say, we've changed our minds. What came to me was looking for some other tool for this county to have in terms of trying to staff without hanging up your budget process and creating regular positions that go on into perpetuity when you know you may not need those indefinitely.
Oh, Mr. Chair, one of the other things that it actually did stem from planning public works, so I will put them on the spot, in the assessor's office, is there is an increased need of work in those areas. We really are getting slammed with the different developments coming in and the assessment. So we have to do something, but our concern in administration is, okay, we go ahead and hire individuals, but what happens if the bottom end falls out, or the economy takes a downturn, then what happens? So we kind of want to ease our way into this turn in the economy, but we want to do it strategically. So this avenue will give us the ability to hire somebody, look at it after a year or maybe 2, depending on what we go with, and okay, are we receiving money back from those developments? We evaluate that. Once we say, okay, this is happening, we can continue with this, and we're being funded with that. So that's kind of where this stemmed from. We just want to do it strategically and have an ability to have an out too as well. So.
The other thing that this will do, when you have a need for help, for staff help of some kind, the options are hire a temporary person, and sometimes, again, given the skill level, those may not be available. If they are, you still have the limit of the 999 hours, and I have seen folks use someone up to that limit and then bring in someone else, and that's where you start getting into trouble with the union. If you show a pattern of continually using more than 1,000 hours in any given fiscal year, even though it may not be by the same person. You stayed afoul, or you stayed out of trouble with CalPERS, but you haven't necessarily stayed out of trouble with circumventing the union's right to represent employees, because essentially if you're using 2 employees, 2,080 hours a year doing the same work, that's not something I'm suggesting. It's not something the union has raised. I don't think this county has done that prolifically in any way, shape, or form, but it just gives you that tool.
Are there any other questions, Georgia?
Actually, one more question. Sorry, Mr. Chair. The limited term positions, every day they add, are they getting closer to vesting under PERS and all the other requirements?
Yes, because they become a member of CalPERS, not necessarily vested with CalPERS, but they become a member of CalPERS just as a regular employee would. Oftentimes, what I've seen, I'll give you a classic example of the development-related issue in a jurisdiction where I worked previously, lots of building inspection activity, and there was a core that the county needed. There was a core number of building inspectors to keep up with the regular work, but during certain phases of development, sometimes that would spike by 150 or more people. And that was a way to bring those folks in for a year, assess it at 9 months, determine whether or not those positions, how many should be extended, how many did we have funds to accomplish the work, kind of things. All the while, they were members of a retirement system, not necessarily completing enough service credits to retire by any stretch, could ultimately happen. The whole idea being is if you saw 5 years or better worth of stable funding at that level, you may want to convert those positions to regular. But this just avoids you being in the position where you have to put the axe down and eliminate a position, especially when they're filled. It's a lot harder.
Mr. Chair, I think this is a time to actually give direction because it's early in the process, and give direction that they explore it, that they meet and confer, bring it back to the board to see, because I'm sure other things are going to develop, questions, maybe things that may not work for this county. And I'm assuming that the department heads are going to play a big part in this as well, because the recommendations for these limited term positions would come from the department heads.
Oh, absolutely. These are the people who would use them.
Okay, so I'd like to give direction to move forward with exploring this idea.
The rest of the board?
I won't support it, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, what do we got to do to give direction?
I would say let's do a motion, and then,
I will put that in the form of a motion then.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Okay. Passes 3-2 to direct you to explore this.
Okay, and we will report back.
Yes.
Thanks, Georgia.
I think we're going to the 5-year plan next, or are we still kind of?
No, that's actually going to be deferred to item number 4, I believe, on our agenda.
I guess I didn't, what I'm thinking of is not going too far into this before I give the public chance to comment on what's been said. So
Okay.
maybe I'll open it up to the public if anybody has any comments on what's been discussed already about the budget procedure. Okay, seeing none, then I guess we'll go on forward.
Go ahead.
Mr. Snow, did you? Janet, do we have a microphone?
like you have stakeout lines. Yeah, stakeout lines. Yeah, federal guidelines. Then I was watching about grants. One thing that CalPERS, retirement, and all that. But one thing that it's called produce and productivity. Then you got employees. Then you got full-time. Like she said, the 99 hours per week were, right? That's free overtime there, right? You get time and a half and all that. Then one thing you got to talk about, I mean, I got 10 budget books. To see budget books, but I know county's bigger than the city. Right? And then the season yesterday wanted to mean the guys will be broke within 5 years. That's called wasteful spending. Way you got to spend things, you have operations, see operations, you got to count operations. What the problem is, there's waste. The waste is spend. And you guys let it spend. Because when you spend money, you get more money. Right? So to the government, where do you guys see it there? But the point is, right, it's called under budget. And under budget means under budget is under budget. Where you want to balance the budget. And you need to figure, you want to create, it's called revenue. You want to create revenue. And how someone says, we're not here to make money. Well, we are there to make money. It's called, you have police for the cashiers. See, please. So when we have, and then you got a map, how you guys can do things, right? How the future is, the county is. Well, one thing that I figure, is non-union. So when you get a union, but you have a kind, you have to deal with the union, and it's called prevailing wages. So the point is, right, you hire a person that's qualified. If you look at all your demands you guys got there to fill the gaps where you need to fill, who's doing what, evaluation, what things are wrong in the county, things to see over there. So the point is, right, as if you look at how much money you spend on an employee, a worker, right, and then go from there. So the point is, right, it's under budget and balance your budget. And when the different ways to do things, you want to train the county, you train the city, same thing. So the point is, right, I'm saying it so they can understand what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Anyone else would like to address the board on the items we've talked about so far? Seeing none now. Linda?
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
So we're on item number 3 at this point in our agenda, and this is found for us on page 92 within the board packet. We're going to be discussing now with you a tentative budget timeline for fiscal year 14-15, as well as discuss with your board the critiquing of last year's budget that we had for 13-14 fiscal year. And we basically have created a fiscal year 14-15 budget hearing agenda. Again, we'll be looking at that and analyzing that. There's going to be a few changes that we're going to be recommending, but we do want to get your feedback and your input from last year, and to see if we can see if we need to make any changes to make things better. So we have Melinda here as well to discuss that timeline with you right now. Melinda.
Okay. I just wanted to quickly go through that timeline that we have, that we currently have. It's kind of a working copy, so it's subject to change as issues come up or things come up that we need to address. Basically, we sent out all the to all the departments. We sent out the budget preparation templates, and then also their salary and cost information to use for their budgets. And then most of the departments, a good 95%, have returned their budgets to us. And we've actually received quite a few narratives back, although they're not due until Thursday, but we've received quite a few narratives back already. We've started meeting with the department heads to review their budgets and any concerns that they have that we can address, or we might need to hold on a little bit longer. Then we have the meeting today. Final revisions, final requests are due by the end of the month. Item number 8, projected layoff notices to be presented to the Board of Supervisors. We are not anticipating any layoffs at this point, but we are holding that just in case. We have another special board meeting on May 27th, and then we will be going into finalizing the budget and presenting it on June 16th. The early part of June 3rd or June 10th, we are looking to hold another special board meeting in which we're going to kind of do a dry run of the budget hearings. And then also, this is new, at the end of, at the close of budget hearings, we would like to adopt the recommended budget. That would give us the opportunity to go ahead and would allow us to start recruitments for any new positions that we have or vacant positions that we haven't started the recruitment process on. So by adopting the recommended budget at the end of the budget hearings, that would give us an opportunity to continue on and basically implement the new fiscal year 14-15 budget. In researching the possibility of doing this, a lot of counties do this at the end of their budget hearing, so it's not anything new, or it's new for us, but it's not a new concept up and down the state. And then in October, the final auditor's budget will be presented to you for final adoption. And basically that's taking the ending balances, adjusting for the year-end fund balances and putting that into the budget. And so that's kind of our template that we have for the budget process this year. Any questions?
Are there any questions on the board?
One thing I'd like to add to that, item number 15, when you look at that, it talks about the FTE employees being able to start hiring. What normally happens, we have to wait till the adoption of the budget, and what in our case normally is in October. So we start the process, and holiday then is up upon us, November, December, and we're looking at interviewing in January-ish or so, and bringing somebody on board in February. So when you look at the salaries within, where we're at today, when we get the full report, you'll notice they're down, or there's vacant positions as well. I know that was an item that was brought up during our board retreat. Why are there so many vacant? And part of it is because by the time we try to hire somebody, it takes time. But in this particular case, it can kind of help us start the process sooner. I think it's pretty important that we do that. But I just wanted to make sure the board understood that.
Okay, then we have a draft
Mr. Chair.
of the agenda, the budget hearing agenda.
Supervisor Dela Cruz has a question.
Right, and I bring this up every year. And I brought it up last year, and I'll bring it up again right now. We're not using these vacant positions to balance a budget, right?
No, that's the reason why we really want to change this, so we can bring people on. We really need staffing now. I think that's really critical for the departments. It's just happened that the way things are, the way we've been balanced, or the way we've had these positions outlined from last year, it just takes time. Things happen. And then on top of that, what happens is maybe someone, you offer the position, then they turn it down. Then we have to go through the process of second or third in line and maybe going back out again to recruit. And it really kind of puts a strain on the department as well as even staff and going through this whole process. But to answer your question, that's not our intent, and I would say no with that.
I mean, if you don't find somebody within 3 months of the new fiscal year, you could always take 3 months worth out of that budget, take it back to the general fund.
That's true, and part of that, we look at and evaluate the rollover for the year. So we'll look at the figures, we'll look at the numbers, and then we'll anticipate a possible rollover for the following year. So we're basically rolling that back over, especially in the general fund side of things.
All right, thank you.
Supervisor Botello?
I guess I got a dumb question, and I just have to ask it. Why does it take till October 7th to adopt the new budget? Because, we're almost through one whole quarter, and the staff departments work real hard to establish, a pretty straightforward process up to when we're going to have the hearings in June. Why can't we adopt it quicker than that?
I believe that, Joe Paul, I don't see him here, but I believe that the state controller's guidelines state that the auditor has to adopt the budget by the first board meeting in October. And so by the time, it takes a couple of months, even though the fiscal year ends June 30th, it takes a couple of months to finalize all the receivables and the payables and journal entries and that kind of thing. So it takes us a couple of months to actually close the books, and then we need to take that, the closing fund balance, and put it into the adopted, the auditor's adopted budget.
So I take it most counties adopt it in a couple of months after they've had their hearings and
with regards to the auditor's office, that's correct, and that's the thing that we were just talking about is we would like to adopt the recommended budget at the close of the hearings that week for the administrative side of things, so we can start working with that budget for the year instead of having to wait till the auditor adopts his formal for the state controller's office.
And one last question. I assume maybe with the new accounting system, when that's up and running in a year or two time, whenever we get that going, will that make this process a little bit more expedient?
Define process. What do you mean?
There's so much information, revenues from different departments flowing in and expenses flowing out, but and into consolidated with the auditor's office. With the new system that we're working on, would that maybe facilitate that we could do the final adoption sooner?
I don't want to speak for Joe Paul and his office, but I can tell you that, having the new system in place will make things a lot easier because the departments will actually be doing a lot of their work, and it'll be actual work at that time. So what happens a lot of times is there's a lot of paper-driven accounting that we have to submit and do things, journal entries and other things that we submit to the auditor's office, and then they process. So I would say yes, most definitely with that, with the new ERP system.
Yeah, thank you.
I think it would be more efficient. You can provide value to the reports that departments are going to get, plus the board of supervisors in terms of completing the audit. We're still probably going to go within the March 21st, 31st of the following year.
Yeah, and keep in mind too, just from a reporting perspective, one of the things that we've worked on the auditor's office and administration is making sure that whatever reports we need to generate out of the new ERP, we're building that with that in mind. So the CAFA, for instance, for the most part, it's going to be a click of a button. It's going to be a little bit more than that, but a click of the button then to generate that actual report. Obviously, there's going to be narratives and there's going to be other pieces of it that need to be done. But for the most part, it's going to be a lot quicker than having to wait months to gather the information and create the CAFR, for instance. That's an example.
Before I call Joe Paul up to the hot seat, Ray, but your item 15 on your list here, the adoption of the recommended budget at the close of hearing, that's going to allow you to hire the people that Supervisor De La Cruz was concerned about, and it would kind of make even the full adoption of the final budget almost a moot point, because you will be functioning as like the budget has been finalized.
Well,
so it'll give you the freedom to function.
For operations within the county, yes, it gives us the ability to operate in July,
Where in
basically.
the
from
years
that.
past, we were having to wait till October. to
That's
fully
correct.
operate.
That's correct.
Okay. Joe Paul, if you'd like to come up to the podium, I think we have a few questions for you.
Let me ask my question.
Good
My
morning,
question's very simple.
Chair, Board of Supervisors, Joe Paul Gonzalez, County Auditor.
Let me ask the question, Joe, real simple. By implementing this new accounting system that we have in place, is it going to expedite the due date of the audit for that fiscal year? Like, for example, this year was what, March 21st that the audit
No.
came out?
No, it won't do that.
Okay, thank
The due date will always be March 31st. That won't change. The difference is that the CAFR will be completed a lot more timelier than the 31st. You know, we're actually looking for a November or December submission, which is, it's actually, you know, typical in other counties that.
And the CAFR is all internal reports more for the Board of Supervisors and those interested in the community, how the county is working from financial, and the audit is more for external users.
Well, the CAFR is kind of it has a financial audit. That's, you know, that's part of the CAFR. You have the single audit, you have the management report. Those are all combined in the comprehensive report. And so the financial section that our CAO was talking about, with the new ERP system, it will generate a first draft much quicker. And we go through probably 30 drafts before we get to a final. So it will help us, you know, tremendously as far as time-wise, because all that's done manually right now. So once we have it automated, that will, you know, that will help us get to a understanding of where we're at fiscally much quicker.
Good, thank you.
Supervisor Botello, do you want to ask any questions?
Well, I think that answered my question too. I asked, you know, the final adoption is in October 7th. It's almost the end of the first quarter, and we worked pretty hard with department staff to get the, budget balanced, and we have the hearings in the first part of June. It just seems like it's almost that long to get it finally adopted when everybody has kind of moved on to the next year.
Well, I think the plan is, I hope we're on the same page, because I was not in the room when you were discussing this, but the plan is to include all the 16 schedules that are required by the County Budget Act, that they be included in your proposed budget. In years past, they weren't all included in the budget, and therefore you were not ready to adopt it, because you're adopting the schedules as required in that act. So I think the plan is that all those schedules will be before you in the proposed budget. So if at the conclusion of the budget hearings you make your changes, the changes are incorporated as part of the direction in the budget hearing, during the budget hearings, then basically, you have, at the conclusion of the hearings, adopted the budget.
And that's item 15, when you look on the wall there, Joe Paul, it's number 15, so, yeah.
And the auditor's office is in agreement with this. In fact, this is something that we have been striving for in the auditor's office, that this be completed during, in the proposed budget, because in the proposed budget, it's very, very hard to make decisions, the board to make decisions without seeing what the cumulative effects are throughout the, throughout the county. And those schedules give you that information.
That's good to me.
Okay, thank you, Joe Paul.
All right, thank you.
Any questions?
No, I think we're good to continue.
Okay, so I was going to go on to the draft of the budget agenda. Basically, we wanted to get your input. Last year, we changed the hearings to items that were on consent agenda and items that were on regular agenda. We wanted to get your feedback on that. Our proposal is that we would do the same thing this year. There doesn't appear to be very many modifications to that schedule. I have a little bit of detail on the dates that I need to work on. But basically, all the items that were on the regular agenda would still, I'm sorry, on the consent agenda would still be on the consent agenda this year. If there were any changes, any big changes, we would pull them off of the consent agenda and put them on the regular agenda. But right now, it doesn't appear that there will be anything that needs to be pulled off of the consent agenda at this time. And then the same goes with the regular agenda. Most of the consent agenda is what we call subvented funds, human services, basically their revenue covers their expenditures. And then on the regular agenda, we're proposing the same budget units that we had last year. Most of those are general fund departments, and so usually there's a little more discussion with those items. Offhand, let's see, we're adding under the Sheriff's Department, we're going to actually move the Office of Emergency Services to the CAO's office. I believe at their last board meeting, there was direction to move the Office of Emergency Services back under the CAO's office. So that item will be moved to the CAO's office. And then we're adding in a court security budget this year, budget unit, trying to separate out the costs of running the new courthouse. I'm trying to, between the sheriff's office, we're trying to separate out those costs so we can try to get a true cost of what that expense is. I think that's most of the changes. Under Public Works last year, we had a separate utilities budget. That didn't really, that wasn't really necessary to separate that out that way, so we're putting that back under maintenance this year. So other than that, I don't really think there's any changes that we're looking at. I don't really have any new budget units or changes to that. So basically, wanted to get your idea. Did you like the way that the budget was presented last year? Do you want to make any changes? This is a draft, so we can keep changing it all the way through approximately June 16th.
Supervisor Barris?
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, we'll treat this agenda much like we do a regular agenda, where if there are consent items we want to pull and have further discussion, we can do that.
Right.
And discuss it and then approve it separately if we deem necessary.
Right. So if there's something, just like a regular board
Exactly.
meeting
So
agenda.
as long as that's available and flexible that way, I'm okay with it. On the very top part of this, the budget hearings will resume on June the 18th.
Yeah.
After the regular board meeting. Do we mean the 17th? Do we want to change
We
that
actually meant the
date?
17th, right. So there are some details and dates that I need to change on here still. And
Okay,
so
but-
that's one of them that we did catch this
All right,
weekend.
so we
We
just
saw
mean
that.
that we're, after the board meeting, regular board meeting on the 17th, we will continue the budget hearings that started on Monday.
Right.
And then continue on through the 8th, whatever
Right.
time it takes to finish. Okay.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are there any other questions from the board? I'd just like to make a comment that I was really pleased with the way the budget hearings went last year, and I want to give credit to Supervisor Rivas for pushing the idea of having many of the funds on consent agenda, and I think that worked very well. Look forward to it working well again this year. With that, I think I will open it up to the public at this stage for anyone from the public.
Good morning again. Marty Richmond from Hollister, having the pleasure of sitting through the budget hearing last year. It certainly worked a lot better than the previous year. I think it's 100% better. But I still think there is one area where you can make an enormous improvement. I call it the toothpaste problem, which is squeezing the toothpaste out of the tube, and you keep using it until you get down to the end, and then at the end you look and you say, oops, we're $7 million on the wrong side of the line. Now what? And then all of a sudden you start backing up on the budget because you've got to go find that money. And when you back up, you only back up so far, so everybody's not at equal risk, if you know what I'm talking about. Because human beings are like that. We only back up mentally so far. I would like to see you, and I know this is going to sound complicated, but I like the budget layout, that's fine. But I would like to see on these budgets to be able to give you the flexibility and to really be able to spread your resources where you want to use them, rather than going through with a chart at the end and saying, well, we got, we're $4 million short, who can we get that back from? I would like to see you break each budget up into two parts, each budget segment, and one part would be essentially the untouchable part, okay? And then there would be the part that basically is at risk in each and every budget. So that when the sheriff's department comes in, as it must occasionally, and says, I got to have another X amount of dollars and whatever, and you decide, yes, we're going to give you those X amount of dollars in either your fixed part or your non-fixed part, then you can go back to the non-fixed part of everybody else's budget and see where you can get it from. You don't have to go back to their whole budget. Every department, maybe I'm making this too complicated, I'm trying to explain it off the top of my head. Every department's got to have a core budget to operate. And then they essentially have something more than that to operate more efficiently or whatever they need to do. I think the core budget should not be at risk, or you've got to close the department down. I mean, and nobody's going to do that. So you should lock that core budget up and say, look, that much money, wherever it goes, Health and Human Services, wherever it is, that much is not at risk. We're not going to trade that off with any other department because we've got to keep that operation going. And you should ask the department head, what is the core portion of your budget? And then there is the essentially non-core portion. And those non-core portion is where you trade off whether you want another deputy sheriff, and I'll wrap up, or you want more people in Health and Human Services. And that way, everybody's at equal risk, rather than just try to back up the budget every time till you can find the money and say, oh, it has to come out of here. I think for those of you who remember the chart with the big number at the bottom, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else from the public?
I would just like to make a comment that it is our goal that we will bring a balanced budget to your board.
Yes.
Linda, I have one question about the utilities account. I think that was created with the idea that we could develop some cost savings and encourage cost-saving methods. Apparently, that didn't work.
Joe Paul can correct me on this. I believe that it was determined that that wasn't a proper budget unit. The idea was to look at the costs of, kind of separate out the costs of these utilities, but I believe that it was determined that that wasn't an appropriate budget unit.
Yes, Melinda's correct. Under the state controller's guidelines, that budgetary unit did not meet the definition. In order for it to be a budget unit, you have to appropriate salary and benefits to that unit. In this case, it was all services and supplies, so it's not a.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
Any questions or comments on the proposed agenda? No? Okay, if not, I think we'll move on to the next item.
Yes.
Okay, I think I've had a request for a break, so before we go to the next item, let's have a 10-minute break. Okay, Mr. Espinoza?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we're on item number 4 on our regular agenda. Today, we're going to be discussing with you, your board, the 5-year plan, and this is found for you on page 100 and 101 in your packet, and Melinda's here to talk more about that. Melinda?
Okay, so at our at the budget retreat, we talked about compiling a 5-year plan, and after a lot of thought, consideration, we kind of narrowed down what we wanted, what we thought that this 5-year plan should include, and we've come up with an outline. So we don't want to. The sample that we gave you was basically over 100 pages. It was, I believe, Monterey counties. And this is our first go at this 5-year plan. So I don't think it's going to be 100 pages. And so we tried to narrow down the scope of it. So our outline for this is that basically we're going to have some goals and objectives of this plan. We'll state the goals and objectives of this plan. Provide some demographic information. A big part of San Benito County is our location is that we're really close to Santa Clara County and technology counties. However, a lot of our demographics are also that we're a lot like the Central Valley in agriculture and things. So anyways, we wanted to present some demographics that kind of the uniqueness of San Benito County, and then present some financial information, the past 5 years, trends, revenue and expenditures. A lot of that information was presented during fact-finding. And then we're going to say, what do the next 5 years look like? We have some issues that we need to deal with regarding staffing and infrastructure, to name a few. So we're going to put together kind of a global picture of what revenues and expenditures might look like in the next 5 years. And then through the narratives, we want to pull out some information, some departmental information, caseload information, what they're seeing their departments looking like in the next 3 to 5 years. And then based upon the information that we received from those narratives, I think we're going to come up with some major concerns that are facing our county right now, be it revenue, increasing revenue, dealing with infrastructure, just whatever those top concerns turn out to be. And then we want to present some ideas or options in achieving that fiscal balance. So I think that's, we have kind of an outline, and we're going in and filling in these different pieces with information that we currently have or that we need to compile. So just to kind of give you an outline of what we're looking for in that 5-year plan.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, I think, I'm a supporter of a 5-year plan, but I think it's really easy for a document such as this to get shelved away, to get overwhelmed in our demographics. It sounds great, looks good, but I think what really needs to be emphasized in a 5-year plan, what I'm looking for from a policy perspective, is to have a huge emphasis on forecasting our revenues, forecasting our expenditures. And I think this last point here, options, I think is a terrible word. I think what we need to have is a very strategic approach. We need to have some strategic policy options as a board on how we can achieve fiscal stability as a county, because we certainly have a fiscal problem in this county, and we have had since our economy tanked. And so when I look at this plan, I think the top part is it's fluffy, it's great, this is who we are. But what I'm looking for as a supervisor is I want to look at this document and be able to say, okay, this is the strategic approach we're going to take as a board on how we're going to restore our county so we're on proper fiscal footing. And I think that what our strategy or options need to be is a very a proactive, actions that we can take as a board to address any future imbalances between revenues and expenditures, and how these options or how these strategies are going to allow us to restore stability here in our county, or future stability, achieve that. And this is going to be a document. These are going to be some strategies that are going to help us prepare for future economic some downturns, because there certainly will be some. That's what I'm looking for a 5-year plan, and I just wanted to say that. I think those are the most important qualities that I think this plan can have. So, thank you.
Supervisor Botello and then Barris.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't disagree with anything Supervisor Rivas pointed out. But the question I wanted to ask my fellow board members is 5 years really too long of a horizon to accomplish those type of goals that you just spoke about, Supervisor Rivas? Because, that's twice today. I think we all heard up here. What I'm asking my fellow board members is if 5 years is too long of a horizon to really have that type of information available. I agree with some of the fluff part of it on the top, the demographics. It's every report we seem to have, EIRs and things like, has that information. But financial information of the past 5 years and future 5 years, to me, it's just too long of a period of time. And what that tells me is our trends and, maybe where we could anticipate the growth at. But I wonder if we should consider it to be a 3-year workable document. I'm interested in hearing what my fellow board members have.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I couldn't agree with you more, Supervisor Rivas. I think we have a lot of the what's in this 5-year plan, but the how is really going to be our tool, our planning tool, so to speak. And I'm assuming that we're going to incorporate the study that we're doing into the staffing, the infrastructure. All of that will be determined, at least in part, by the results of the study. So I agree with you. I think we don't want it to be an outline that is going to sit. We wanted to make it a workable, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, it doesn't matter. We just need to make sure that we get there by using the tool that we have worked, or you have worked so hard to present to us and us adopt. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor De La Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm hoping that, and I hope Joe can enlighten me on this one, I'm hoping that this new system that we have in place would allow us to make what-if scenarios and assumptions. And the reason why I say that is because in my work, in my private work, one of my responsibilities is to budget and to update the budget on a monthly basis and provide that to the owners, stakeholders. And if there's a differences of what we budgeted, then I make those adjustments, and then year to value to date, it tells us the new moving target number. And I'm hoping that if we are going to move forward on a multi-year planning process, there are certain assumptions we can take, and there are certain fixed, for example, contracts with unions and vendor contracts and, copier contracts that we could all incorporate in the budget and spread out those over time, and then make adjustments. And from the incomes perspective, we're talking about property taxes, we talk about other stuff that's come in. And if those numbers don't come in at those levels, then the staff can come back to us and says, well, according to this new latest data, then the assumption should be this direction. Here's the bad thing. The bad thing is that if it's a reduction in income, someone's going to have to absorb that cost. We already have a fixed cost. We have 70% already that's already fixed through salaries and benefits. So we're going to have to go back to the unions, and obviously they're not going to say no. We have a contract. We got to work. So it's a effective tool in a sense to vision and know what the future is, and allows us to move to that target number. It's a bad thing because we can't make drastic changes at the moment. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I may be able to answer some of those questions. Yes, the new ERP system has what they call business analytics, and we're able to extract information and manipulate it. And there's another thing as well as we're able to do program projections or projections as well within the system itself. That's one of the requirements that we requested when we were looking at the system to make sure that we can do forecasting and other things such as that. So it's a very important tool. We really haven't had that, and we really need that. So that was something that we wanted to make sure we had. I don't know if Joe Paul, you had anything further to add to that?
I'm a proponent of planning and absolutely, having at least a vision for where we want to be. And I agree that the better that we're able to forecast the future, the better off we're going to be at meeting our goals. So I think it's important that we look at a 5-year horizon. At the 5th year, of course, it's not as relevant as the next, as the first year of that 5-year plan. There it becomes, our forecasts are more measurable and more meaningful. But nevertheless, at least we have a roadmap where we want to be. And so we can look back, 5 years later and say, hey, how did we measure against that forecast? And what are the things that we want to do? What do we want to accomplish as an organization to reach our financial goals? And so, for example, if we were to pass I understand that there's in the Assembly, there's a bill to allow counties to pass a special district tax for county unincorporated areas only, not cities. This is new. This is the bill that may or may not come to fruition, but for the first time, there's a tool. There may be a tool for counties to do what we wanted to do originally. To provide an opportunity for the unincorporated taxpayers to be at the same level that the city of Hollister was or is. But there may be, for example, a measure where we ask for a 5-year tax. So the 5-year horizon is very relevant. And so, I just want to, caution the board that, well, it's more work for Melinda. I'm sure she was happy as can be to hear that the board's going to a 3-year projection. I definitely think, you can hold her to that 3 years, and if possible, to go ahead and try to forecast the 5 years. The state of California has a forecasting model that is like 110 variables. So it's very, very sophisticated information for their 5-year projections that, I think part of that is relevant for San Benito County. The ERP system does have that capability in New World systems. So there will be a lot of tools available to us that we don't presently have. So I think if the board makes a decision, for example, in their 5-year plan to include an increase in the transit occupancy tax or a district sales tax, we can incorporate those in the model that we create for the 5-year forecasting model. It's easier to forecast the expenditures than it is the revenue, with any accuracy.
And then, Joe Paul, this document I think one of my fellow supervisors said he didn't want to see this just get put on a shelf. We're going to be looking at this every year.
Every
correct?
year.
Every year we'll be updating it and moving it out one additional year.
And I'm sure that as part of the process, Melinda's going to be comparing, hey, how did we fare?
Yeah.
Against the planned revenues and planned expenditures. And so it's a very relevant model for us to be following. There's no way that you can know where you're going to be at 5 years if you haven't planned for it.
Any other questions? One other comment I'd like to make, and I'm not quite sure if it's major concerns, but if we can kind of forecast our economic development efforts, in other words, project where we want to be in 5 years as far as bringing in businesses.
That can be part of the,
And again, whether it's stuck under major concerns or has its own title, whatever, but I think that is an important part of our forecasting.
Mr. Chair, God, I don't want to sound like the bad guy here, or, I guess I'll be devil's advocate here. What significance does that have in our 5-year planning?
Revenue?
Yeah, but revenue for local businesses, which we all support.
No, if it's, it would be increasing property tax, increasing sales tax, whatever type of businesses we were to bring in.
Yeah.
I think we need to be, and that's what I've been hearing out in the streets is what are we doing to bring in businesses? And I think that needs to be part of our forecasting.
I even say it, even through my campaign trail, we support economic development, and we never really sit down and talk about what direction we're going.
But if it's in a plan, then maybe we can.
Okay.
and Mr. Chair, if I could just make one more comment. In a 5-year plan, you can have a short-term, goals and long-term. Long-term mean you can accomplish a lot of things within 1 year, within that 5-year plan. So I think we have to just keep in mind that this is, a moving target, but that there are a lot of doables within the 5 years that we are planning. So as long as we set our eye on the prize, I think that we can accomplish this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, are there any other questions of the board? Okay. I have a
No,
hand
just,
raised in the
this
from
is
the public.
this is a big undertaking for our first year to come up with a 5-year plan. So I think it's very important that it's going to be a continuing plan. It's this is a start, and we're committed to starting it and continuing it on, updating it every year. So every year it'll get better, and hopefully our forecasts are, we'll be able to target those a lot better as we go along too.
Yeah. I just wanted to add, one of the reasons why we brought this to your board is to get the input that we received from you. So it's valuable input that we actually received, and we've been discussing it within administration. So we'll go ahead and put these items to the drawing board, so to speak, and get this moving forward. So thank you.
Okay.
I want to make sure we mention that Sarah is, we're kind of co-partners on this, so she's going to be pulling a lot of information from the departments. We've already told them that. So Sarah and I will be working on this together too, so not just my endeavor.
Okay, I'd like to open this up to the public. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this?
To the public. Do you want to comment on this? Marty Richard from Hollister, thank you again for the time. I support a 5-year plan. You need a 5-year plan. Somebody said up here, we do a lot of things in 1 year. What do we do in 1 year? We do very little in 1 year. Everything here takes years. It takes literally years. These development projects take 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. And sometimes we're sitting here. Here's a perfect example. We look at the solar development project. What was a 5-year plan? What happened to 5 years? Boom. This way you will see if it's moving, if you have a 5-year plan. So I agree 100%. And the world has gone bizarre. I agree again with Supervisor Rivas 100%. The question is, what are you going to do with it when it doesn't agree with your political philosophy? I'll give you a perfect example. In the city of Hollister, they had a 5-year plan, and the guy who was the city manager said in 5 years we're going to be broke and the sewer plant's going to fail. And the fourth year, the second year he said the same thing, the third year he said the same thing, and the fourth year. But it didn't agree with the political philosophy of the people sitting on the other side of that dais. So they did nothing about it. And in the 5th year, they were broke and the sewer plant failed. So the 5-year plan won't do anything if you don't pay any attention to it when it disagrees with your political philosophy. And if you're going to let your political philosophy determine what you think about the plan and whether you're going to do anything about what it says, then don't waste your time and don't waste your money. Whoever's on the board there has got to look at it and say, it means something, or I'm just dismissing it because I don't like what it says, which is exactly what happened in the city of Hollister, because I read all the budgets and I read the 5-year projections. So 5 years is perfect, and those projections are really, really important. And if you see we're already 4% behind on year 1 and where we said we're going to get there, we're not getting there because you can't make that up in year 2, in year 3, and year 4, and year 5. And it's the same thing with our development, and it's the same thing, and I agree, I think the economics ought to be in there. So we can look at it in year 1 and say we either made what we said we were going to make, and we didn't make what we said we were going to make. I think it's critical to have it, and I disagree vehemently who people say, we know what the demographics is here. I don't think, and I don't mean as a personal insult, but from my discussions, I don't think very many people in this county really know what the demographics are here. They think they know because we've been reading the same thing in the same budgets for 20 years. But you know what? It doesn't look like that anymore. I doubt if most of you know what the average income in Aromas is. I do, $124,000 a family. Or in Hollister, or in San Juan Bautista, $55,000 a family. Or in Tres Pinos, $89,000 a family. Or in 20 places I can name here, North County or anywhere else. You all think everybody looks the same. They don't. And they don't work here, and they commute, and they bring in $850 million a year, and nobody even talks about that. Everybody goes crazy, and I will wrap up with the agriculture. It's very important. Agriculture, total value, $300 million, that's terrific. $850 million our commuters bring in a year, and we treat them like dirt because we won't fix the roads they drive on. It doesn't make any sense. So if you pay attention to your 5-year plan, I think it's going to be a great plan, and I think the idea is a great idea. I compliment you for adopting it.
Is there anybody else from the public that would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board, and I just want to make sure that we are okay with a 5-year plan. Supervisor Patello?
Yeah, you know, and that's fine as long as we accomplish something. Sometimes you get too long, and just what Marty said, Hollister had a plan, 5-year plan, and he used the example of the sewer plant. I don't know if that's true or not, but let's say it is. Where I feel we have a serious problem in our county is our roads. Unquestionably, it's just patchwork, and we need a lot more than that. What I want is to make sure we move towards accomplishing the goals that we outline in the 5-year plan. And whether, you know, I was concerned about it being too long, and it's easy to put on the shelf, and you never look at it again. A 3-year plan, you're adding years on both ends. It doesn't really matter. We'll be doing the same thing with the 5-year plan. But we have to make sure that we're moving towards adequate staffing in our departments, infrastructure improvements, and besides the budgetary goals that we have. And so that's what I'm looking for, and that's fine, going in this direction. And, you know, we'll go like that. Thank you.
Okay, and again, I just want to reiterate that this cannot be a document that we do and then 5 years later we pick up.
Yeah.
And look and see how we did. This needs to come back before us every year, and we tweak it, add to it, and refine it, and map how we're going. With that, Ray?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we're on item number 5 on our agenda today. That's found for you in page 102 through 106 on your agenda packet. In this particular item, we're going to be discussing with your board a third quarter report for fiscal year 13 and 14, and Melinda again is here to discuss that with your board.
Okay, so we just ended the third quarter. This is not a true third quarter financial update in the fact that the third quarter just ended and we still have quite a few financial information that needs to be updated into the system. However, I think it's a good measure as to where we are at the end of the third quarter. And I also wanted to present, we talked last time also about some trends. Where have we been in the third quarter? So there's a lot of information. I know this is not necessarily the most exciting part of the presentation. So I try to do a couple of things a little bit differently. So anyways, we'll go ahead and get started, and if you have any questions, just let me know. And I also want to say that we're going to look at the third quarter, but then after the third quarter information, I also tried to give you some information is, okay, well, what does the end of the year look like? What has it looked like in the last 5 years? So that information's at the end of the third quarter information. We'll go into looking at how the fourth quarter normally looks at the end of the year. So basically, I tried to compare there's two sets of columns here. The first one is the budget. This is just for the general fund. So what does our budget look like compared, our actual expenditures compared to what we budgeted? And our revenue at this point is 53% of what we budgeted, and our salaries are approximately 66% of what we budgeted, and then everything else that does not include salaries, we call that services and supplies, that those expenditures are about 63%. So over here we have the budget of the revenue and the actual of the revenue. I try to keep them kind of color coordinated. And the same with this salaries. This is what we budgeted in salaries, and this is basically what we've expended so far. And the same with services and supplies. And this is just for the general fund. So to kind of give you a picture of where we are. And then also I did the same thing with all the funds that we have budgeted for the year. Basically, what are the revenue look like? This is what we budgeted, and this is what we've collected so far. And the same with salaries, all the salaries that were budgeted, and this is what we expended so far, and the same with services and supplies. So just to kind of give you a picture of where we are at the end of the third quarter. And then I looked at where do we normally fall at the end of the third quarter versus where we are now. So this is the detail of each fund revenues. Let's take, for example, the general fund. This is a 5-year history. So for the general fund, the 5-year average is around 54%, and we've currently collected 53% of our revenues. So we're tracking about what we normally do. And then this last column is basically comparing last year at the third quarter to this year at the third quarter, and we're down about 6%. I think we're down about 6%. I think a lot of it is relating to, again, the request for the departments at their lack of, what they feel is their lack of clerical support. Billings are getting a little bit further behind because there's not the staff, they don't feel that there's the staff to keep up with some of those billings. We also have a lot of revenue that's not going to be collected or put into the general fund from other trust funds until the end of the year. Once we see what our actual expenditures are, then we're going to move some money over to cover those expenses. So a lot of revenue isn't going to be coming in until the end of the fourth quarter. But I wanted to give you an idea of, what do the various funds look like at this point of time over the last 5 years. Then I kind of graphed that information. So this line right here says we're 3/4 of the way through the year, which is 75% of the year. And what do various funds look like? What have they looked like over the past 5 years? The only one that I put in here is, I keep losing my spot, is the general fund. I also, this line right here represents the general fund. So if you kind of follow that line right there, that's how the general funds looked over the past 5 years. So as you can see, it's pretty steady. So I did the same thing with expenditures. The general fund over the last 5 years, at this point in time, has their expenditures have been about 68% of their budget. And we are currently at 62%. So we're below what we normally spend at this time of the year. A lot of that has to do, I believe, with vacancies. We have quite a few vacancies this year at this point in time, and so I think a big piece of that is salaries. And so then again, I graphed that information. We should be 3/4 of the year, we should expect to see expenditures about 75%. And I graphed I put numbers for the general fund, so you could take a look at those. And last year we were a little bit higher at this point than we are now, but we basically track about the same for the last 5 years. Then I took a look at salaries and benefits. Also 5 years, and what do we look like now compared to 5 years? I didn't have the information, I'm sorry, this is 3 years. I didn't have the information for the full 5 years, so I did 3 years. And we normally, salaries and benefits at this point in time, we're about 74% of where our budget for salaries and benefits are. We are currently at 66%. So again, I think that reflects that there are quite a few vacancies in the county. And then again, I graphed that so you can kind of see, where basically where the general fund is falling, and how we track over the last 3 years. So then I wanted to also give you a picture of what do we look like at the end of the year. And so I did the same thing with revenue expenditures. Over the last 5 years, the general fund has ended up basically a little bit more than what we budgeted. And so keeping with that mindset, we should be at least on track, if not a little bit better, come the end of the year in revenues. And I know some of these graphs look kind of crazy here, but so I tried to keep it with the general fund. And you can see that that we usually track pretty well, if not a little bit above what we budgeted. And the same with expenditures. I looked at the 5-year history of the general fund and their expenditures. The trend for the 5-year expenditures on, particularly with the general fund, we track a little bit below what we budgeted. So if things stay the same and consistent with how we've been in the last 5 years, we should be ending the year a little bit better in revenues and a little bit under in expenditures. So I know it's kind of quickly, and some of the graphs are a little kind of track a little bit funny, but I wanted to at least try to provide you some information just to show. Looks like we're doing really well right now. We still have basically 3 more months to get through, and we should end the year on a positive basis. Any questions or concerns?
Any questions from the board? Are there any questions from members of the public? Okay, seeing none.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melinda, for that. Appreciate that. So we're on our last regular agenda item this morning. This is with regards to miscellaneous items that may affect or have effect with our budget in the future. So we just put a few items on here. As you'll notice, we have the ERP, we have the ERAF, we have development agreements, and any other items that maybe staff or department heads would like to highlight. But the ERAF, I'll just go ahead and start with that. We've been in contact with Assemblyman Alejo's office and been working with them. They're actually getting that particular item on the trailer bill for them on their side. So with the change, a slight change using the Wiggins methodology on that. So that's one of the things that I want to make sure the board's aware of, that is in play right now, and that we'll see how things turn out here in the near future. We'll keep you updated, basically. The ERP, we did want to highlight for you that we are tracking. We're being very mindful of the budget, and but we also do want to make sure that the board's aware that with our current system, we've really never put any money towards development into our current SunGuard system, and we were paying the price for it. So we wanted to highlight that, in the future, we may need to be coming to your board for, just addressing, making sure we're up to date with certain things, maybe changes. We've allocated money, we're good, but we just want to make sure that there's still a cost to operating, especially with technology. There's unforeseen cost or other costs down the road. We're not anticipating that in the next year or even 2, but we definitely want to be mindful of that. And along with that, it's not just the ERP, it's other things. We're currently about, I would say, 7 or 8 years old with the core switches or the switching within our county itself, which we have not addressed. And I think the purchase of that was $250,000 to about $300,000 about 7, 8 years ago. That was prior to me coming on board. But those are things that we need to think about in the future that may affect maybe not this year's budget, but definitely in the years to come. So we're going to put that on the 5-year plan. But we just wanted to make sure that those things may come into play. Development agreements, DA. We've been working with staff, with council and public works planning, and been looking at what we could do to infuse some funding within our organization, the library, also to e-discovery for any records retention act, records request act, to have staff actually receive or look for data or look for mail or look for other things within our organization. Everything is done manually. It becomes very difficult, cumbersome, and costly. So those are the things that we're looking at that we may be able to receive some funding for that through some of these development agreements. Then there's going to be future meetings that we're meeting with. I think even this Friday, I believe we're actually going to be meeting with staff again. But I wanted to make sure the board was aware of that and aware that, we're looking at some of those things. That's really all I had on this particular item. I don't know, Joe Paul, did you want to highlight anything further, especially regarding to the ERP? Okay. That's all I had,
Are there any
Mr. Chair.
questions from the board members?
Just some comments. If we're looking at issues that could affect our future budgets, and our chair talked about economic development, I mean, we have an issue with that we really, I don't feel, are doing enough, and it could be because lack of planning. And I think with the 5-year plan, that's incorporated, I think we're going to be maybe okay with that. The other thing is that the taxes, the sales tax initiative that we're talking about, that can greatly affect what our budget is going to look like in 2017. And so that needs to be incorporated some way, and we have to continue to talk about it and plan on that and how we're going to move forward. And I know we've had it on the agenda, but I think it needs to be in front of us again, so that we know where we're at and how we're going to move forward with that in 2015. So, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else? Mr. Brother De La Cruz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I guess Ray and Joe, when we talk about a 5-year plan, we also talk about the side effects of delaying, projects such as repair. Do we use current operating revenues to repair facilities, or do we use capital money to replace that tear down facility? Because you got to work in a real balance of using current operating money for repairs, or use capital money to build a new facility. And I know there's a lot of legalities on how you can do that. You can't use capital money for certain things, and you can't use operating monies for certain things. So in the 5-year plan, hopefully that you take into consideration and develop a matrix of at what point do we say, you know what, we need to develop a new building instead of continual maintenance on it. Thank you.
Good point.
Anyone else? Okay. Open it up to the public. Anyone from the public like to comment on this last agenda item? Seeing none?
I wanted to say one more thing. I just wanted to thank Melinda and staff and the department heads for attending this morning. There's a lot of work that went into this presentation, so I appreciate it. And the next meeting, just mark on your calendars, we're going to be probably bringing some items back that we need to bring back out of this meeting. But we'll definitely be talking about budget policies and also funds and kind of an overall kind of strategy on what we're going to do. So I just want to make sure the board's aware of that. Thank you.
Okay. So I guess now we will continue till 1:30. We'll have a lunch break until 1:30, and then we'll reconvene for closed session.
Da, 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 da.